this is really good. Like his physical comedy's on point. We're talking about how he's crawling and only using some of his limbs, either some of his legs, only his arms. His face is contorted. The way he's speaking is messed up. And him getting into the Lamborghini using nothing but his legs was so funny. And then he has to drive a mile. Like you said, a mile is not that far, but because he's under the influence so heavily, this is going to be a nightmare. And the way his arms, the way he's making his face, he's drooling. And when he gets to the house and Donnie's on the phone and he's trying so hard to just be like, get off the phone. Like
Right.
he's trying, and it's so entertaining.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Oh, yeah.
We are currently doing a run of movies that we found interesting from 10 years ago, 2013.
Mhm.
And we are continuing forward with that with this next movie here. And it was directed by Martin Scorsese.
Yes.
And it was released on December the 25th of 2013. Today, the Panel Bros will be doing a breakdown for The Wolf of Wall Street.
The Wolf of Wall Street. Make just mhm,
Yeah, there we go.
mhm. That's it, bro. I love this movie, and I'll gush about it the entire time we're talking about it. This movie is absolute pandemonium. It's chaos. It's chaos in the best way. It makes me laugh so much. This movie is not a short movie.
No.
So to like really sit down and give all your time, sometimes you feel like it's a chore with long movies. This is a movie that once this thing is on, like it ain't even background. Like I'm fully locked in because this movie is just such a fun time.
The first thing I looked at was how long the movie was,
Mhm.
because you need to map out if you'll be able to see it in one setting or not.
Yeah.
And I was not able to see it in one sitting.
Mhm.
This is a rewatch, of course, but
Yes.
all right, I had to break it up a little bit. But had I sat there, I know it would have flown by because that's the way
Yeah.
the movie goes. It's 3 hours, but it's not slow.
It doesn't the entire movie feels like someone telling you a story very quickly. Like it's
Right.
like you're just like this the entire time in the best way possible. Like there's no downtime. It's never boring. I think the pacing is perfect for the type of movie that it was. So you never feel like sometimes you'll watch a movie that moves too fast. The pacing is off. This movie needed to be what it was. So like you said, like I watched it in one sitting. Every time I've seen this movie probably anywhere from 5 to 7 times. Every time I've watched it in one sitting because I'm locked in, man. This movie is a riot.
Well, I haven't seen it in a while, so a lot of things came back to me, and I just reminded myself, man, this movie is a wild ride, and it's definitely worth
Yes.
a watch for sure if you love film. So
Mhm.
let's get started.
Yeah.
All right, so we have the opening scene here, and it's a little person toss where they're throwing the little person to hit the bullseye with the Velcro.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we find out how much money Jordan makes. We find out who he's married to, and all the things that he owns.
Mhm.
And we also get introduced to his drug-filled and wild lifestyle, because it's not just
Oh.
about the things he owns. It's not about the money, but it's about the wild lifestyle that he lives. Just quite the opening scene.
This movie wastes literally no time whatsoever to fill you in on this lifestyle. Like you said, it opens up playing, darts with a human body, just playing human darts, down to, like you said, the drug addiction, the party lifestyle, all of that, like right in your face right away. So like the moment this movie starts, it's like, all right, like we're going on a trip. It's just absolutely insane how hard the opening is.
So it's 1987, and we have a 25-year-old Jordan Belfort, played by Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
He does land a job at on Wall Street for Rothschild, and he is going to be employed under Mark Hanna, played
Mhm.
by Matthew McConaughey. So
Yes.
very, very early on, we get introduced to Matthew McConaughey's character, Hanna, and he is still thin and gaining weight back from being in Dallas Buyers Club.
Yep.
That's it. The filming kind of crossed over with one another. He might have either just finished. I think he just finished because he looks like he had a little bit more weight than he did
Yeah,
in
he
Dallas
looked
Buyers
like he
Club.
had a little bit more weight on him. He looked a little bit healthier, and it was great because it's one of those situations where maybe it was just me, but I felt like it helped the role because again, the character he's playing is very quick, blah blah blah, no time to stop, sleep, whatever. So it reflects that like he looks like a very thin individual who doesn't even have time to eat or anything else because he's so busy with the stock.
Right. They have this ridiculous conversation, and then
Oh
this is just more of just letting us know just the types of conversations and dialogue we're gonna have in this
yes.
movie. Just graphic, vulgar, wild, whatever adjective you could think of. That's just what type of movie we're
It's
gonna see.
it's so ridiculous because it's like lunch, and he's already talking about having mass amounts of alcoholic drinks, and even Jordan is like, oh, just water, and McConaughey's character Mark is like, just first day, give him time. Like he knows that Jordan's nervous, he kind of wants to feel this out, and Mark's trying to give him a very very quick like explanation of like how things are, talking about drugs, alcohol, how often do you do this a day, how often do you do that, you got to pump those numbers up, you got to be loose, you
Right.
got to be this, you got to be
Right.
that, and Jordan's just like, yeah, I could do all that. Like you can see he's ready to jump in, but like Mark is just hitting him like everything all at once.
And we get the part that we see that was in the trailer, I believe, or a clip at least that was shown to promote the movie, and we get that little
Yeah.
um, apparently Martin Scorsese, somebody saw him doing it as an acting
Mhm.
exercise to warm up, and they went, "We're gonna put that in the movie."
Now, I have seen that on set. Have you ever seen that before? Because I've seen actors do that. I've seen only one actor, to be fair. I was working on a set many years ago, and I saw an actor, and he was off to the side, and he legitimately was doing the, and he was banging his
Right.
chest, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Like that's his thing." So that is cool. That I didn't know that. So that is really cool that Martin saw someone do it. Say, you know what? We're gonna put that in the movie.
Yeah, I believe I heard Matthew McConaughey say it. So
Okay.
I'm gonna say at some point in time I did it as an acting exercise. If
Mhm.
I did, I forgot, but because you do lots of goofy things when you're doing
Oh yeah.
acting
Oh yeah.
exercises. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he was warming up and somebody saw him. I'm going to assume Martin Scorsese or Leo saw
Mhm.
him and said, because Leo was a part producer on this movie.
Yeah.
So but that's how that made it into the movie. And we will see it again by the end of the movie as
Oh,
well.
we will.
So, Jordan is quickly enticed by the drug fueled stockbroker culture
Mhm.
and Hannah's belief that a broker's only goal is to make money for himself.
Yeah.
Jordan loses his job following Black Monday, the largest one day stock market drop in history. This is after the 1929 stock market crash since then.
Mhm.
And he does take a job at a boiler room brokerage firm on Long Island that specializes in penny stocks. So he went to go talk to this person in an ad that was selling the stocks, and he gets to find out that they make a 50% commission, which is way more
Yeah.
than he was making before.
Yeah.
Um, we get introduced to seeing how good Jordan is at doing his
Mhm.
job. So he's just talking to the person on the phone who really doesn't want to talk, but he's trying to sell this man, on the stock. And um, he does such a good job that the entire place goes quiet just
Yeah.
to watch him sell the man on the phone. And I just thought that was a really cool scene, you know?
It was a really really cool scene because, as you mentioned early on, when he's with Mark, Jordan's idea is like, well, it's great if we make money, but don't we want to help the client make money as well? And Mark
Right.
is like, it's pretty much about us. So we get to see that shift of Jordan in the beginning of someone who's open to the idea of like, hey, like, we want to make money, but we do want to help these clients, to now see where he is and what he's learned in that short time, that short time he was working with that position, where you see him sell, and that incentive to really take care of the client isn't there. It's all about Jordan. Jordan is well aware of the 50% commission that he's been told. So he's like, all right, I'm selling penny stocks, I'm going to do this. And he's hyping this thing, this new place that's literally a shed, but he's hyping it
Right.
up to the high heavens, saying it's this, it's that. We're working with the military, we're doing this. And we as a viewer are like, man, this guy is full of BS. Like he's just telling anything that he knows that this person wants to hear on a get rich scheme, where get rich quick scheme, where you don't have to do anything or anything else. And I do love the scene because, like you mentioned, everyone just stops working because everyone else in that place doesn't operate the same way Jordan does. Obviously, they're like, to them, that's insane. And to see him sell as much as he sold, a couple $1,000s in stocks on penny shares, making I think he made $2,000, I think, on just like that few minute phone call, if I remember correctly. And I love that someone in the room's like, how did you do that? They're not used to that life,
Right.
that type of selling, but it showed us who Jordan is at this point, from where we first met him to where he is now, where now it's like, hey, it's all about the money that goes in my own pocket.
So a little bit of note here. Daryl, the head of that small firm there or brokerage,
Mhm.
that was played by Spike Jones, director of Her.
Yeah.
So that's who that was. Um, so a little note there. So Jordan makes a small fortune thanks to his aggressive pitching style and the high commissions. Jordan befriends his neighbor, Donnie is off, played by Jonah Hill,
Mhm.
and the two start their own boiler room style brokerage company. But
Yes.
before they did that, they had a little interaction where Donnie he wants to ask Jordan what he does
Mhm.
and how much money he makes, and he's like, "How much was your last paycheck?" And he said something. He said 72,000. He said, "Excuse me?" He said 72,000. And then he said, "Well, actually, it was 72,000 and change." And Jonah Hill says this line that I can't forget. I had to take it down here. Donnie says, "You show me your pay stub for $72,000 on it. I quit my job right now and I work for you."
Yep. And he pulls it out, man. He goes, okay, pulls that check out, and within seconds, he wasn't lying. And like Jonah Hill, the Jonah Hill character is just like, he's just so like, like, what? How's that a thing? And you can see what type of character this is going to be, because right then and there, he does exactly what he says. You show me a check for $72,000, I quit my job and I work for you. And that's what he does.
Yeah.
He makes the phone call and he goes, hey, here's the deal. I quit. And he's just like, I'm going to go work for Jordan Belfort now.
Right, and you can imagine, like, and this is the late '80s, for
Mm-hmm.
somebody to see a pay, like, we're in 2023. That's a lot of money by
Yeah.
2023 standards.
Yeah.
So, you know, 87, you're scraping along, you have a family, and you find out that there's
Mm-hmm.
somebody making this much money. Hey, you teach me how to make that much money.
Yeah.
Back in the late '80s here. So after they start their boiler room brokerage company, they recruit Jordan's childhood friends, Robbie, Alden, Nikki, Chester, and Toby, as well as local drug pusher Brad Bonnick, played by John
Yeah.
Berthal,
John Bernthal, baby.
all of whom Jordan trains in the art of the hard sell
Mm-hmm.
and set up the company in an abandoned auto repair shop. Jordan's tactics and salesmanship largely contribute to the success of his pump and dump scheme, in which misleading positive statements inflate a stock's price so it can be sold at an artificially high price. So it's a hard sell, and it's also
Mm-hmm.
a deceptive sell as well, because
Very. Yep.
it's telling the people that it's better than what it actually is. When the scheme's perpetrators sell their overvalued securities, the price plummets, and those who were conned into buying at the inflated price are left with a stock that is suddenly worth much less than what they paid for. So that's how they're making their money.
Oh yeah.
To cloak this, Jordan gives the firm the respectable sounding name Stratton Oakmont in 1989. Soon after, the company becomes immensely successful, moving out of the auto repair shop into a bigger office. An expose in Forbes, which dubs Jordan the Wolf of Wall Street,
Yep.
and a twisted Robin Hood who steals from the rich and gives to himself and his merry band of brokers, causes hundreds of ambitious young financiers to flock to the company because they want in on it
Yep.
too now, causing them to move to an even bigger office because Jordan doesn't want to turn any of these
Nope.
people away. Because guess what? If they make money, he makes money.
Yep. Yep. And
As
like you said, this thing
Yeah,
blows up quick, man.
right.
Like you see everything happening so fast. And it was interesting because, at first he's just like going after small level people. And his wife brings up like, well, like, why don't you go after like people who have millions of dollars and millions of dollars that can afford to do this. And he kind of takes that into account, starts working, and you just see that expansion grow from like his small group of people, 5 to 6, 20, 30, 40. Like this thing just blows up extremely fast because, like you said, he wasn't turning anybody away because if they make money, he makes money.
Right. So, as all of this is happening, Jordan becomes immensely successful and slides into a decadent lifestyle of prostitute and drugs, unfortunately. He is currently married to Teresa, played by Kristen
Yes.
Milotti
Love her.
of How I Met Your Mother,
Love her.
um, and unfortunately has an affair with a woman named Naomi LaPaglia, played by Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
This is where we meet Naomi, played by Margot, and what an introduction do we have here.
Yep.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
Um,
Oh man. The scene in which she comes in, first of all, this was the first time for me specifically that I had ever seen Margot on screen.
Right.
And you kind of feel what everyone else in the scene feels because she's electric. Like when Margot walks on screen, you immediately notices her. We immediately notice her, I should say. And it's
Right.
no secret. She's got very great screen presence, and it translates really well to the quote unquote Duchess character.
Right.
And when she comes on screen, you know, Jordan is enticed right away. You see Donnie enticed right away. And Donnie is on God knows what at this point, and he starts acting out in front of his wife. But you get that immediate reaction from Jordan where you can tell that him and her, like there's going to be a little bit going on. You even see the wife in the background kind of notice it,
Right.
but Jordan's made it a point like he's got his eye on her.
Right. And this eventually leads to them having dinner. And there was a really big line that I can't forget. And, you know, Jordan says, we're going to be really good friends. And she just looks at him and says, no, we're not going to be friends.
Nah,
You
like
know,
yeah, she knows. She knows.
you know, we're not going to be friends. And Margot, who had done quite a few things up until, not quite a few, but had done a few things, she's just showing us what she's got. And just owning a scene where it's her in a room full of people, but now she's owning a scene where it's just her and Leo. And she
Yeah.
would continue to do this throughout the movie. Leo is no slouch,
Nope.
but whenever they're in a scene together, you can't help but just shift your eyes to Margot and what Margot's doing. That's how I
Yeah.
had, you know, what happened with me. And then obviously this leads to, you know, the scene where they're intimate with each other for the first time in the hotel room. And I'm not going to say what she does, but she does something that's very memorable,
Yes.
you know, and,
Yes.
you know, this leads to their affair. And unfortunately, the way the wife finds out is they're doing cocaine off of each other.
Yeah.
And he falls out of the limo, you know, and that's how the wife finds out, you
Yeah.
know?
It's again, like she's radiant, she's beautiful, but her performance when she's on screen, like you said, she's next to Leonardo DiCaprio and she's crushing it. And this is the first time I had ever seen her, and immediately I'm like, man, she's super good. Like she's super
Oh, she's
talented.
great. Yeah.
And like you said, you can't help but you can't take your eyes off of her. And it's not just because she's a beautiful person, but because the performance she's giving. Like it's just like, yo, again, you're in there with Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the most, you know, decorated actors of our time.
Absolutely.
People love that guy. I love Leonardo DiCaprio. You know what I mean? So like to see her on screen and she's very young, like she was in like her early 20s and she's crushing it. Like, and Margot, like you said, she does something in that scene that is very memorable, very memorable. And it's one of those things where we've seen in movies where an actor will do something to make that scene in itself very memorable for years to come. And that's that one scene that she has where you kind of like, you're never going to forget this, you know. And some comedy ensues, they're intimate, and like you mentioned, they get caught because, you know, they're doing drugs together and the wife finds out, he falls out of the vehicle, and that leads to where we know is coming next, where it's like, well, I guess divorce is going to happen now.
Right. I had to look it up. Margot was 23 when the movie was released.
23, dude.
Yeah, when the movie was released. So she probably filmed it while she was either 22 or 23. So
and she killed it, man. Killed it.
Yeah. So Teresa finds out, and unfortunately they divorce. So he marries Naomi in 1991.
Yep.
And then we get this wild bachelor party trip where
Oh,
it's
good
just
God.
straight up, just I don't even know what to say. Just
Yeah,
whatever you
it's
could think of, they did on this trip.
yes, it is.
So,
Again, every time we see a party or any type of scene like this in the movie, it feels like the biggest form of an exaggeration you could have. Like if a friend was explaining a party to you and just saying that it was like out of a 1 to a 10, it was a 20, and they're telling you like there's no way that happened. In this movie, that's exactly what happens. Like everything is pushed to the extreme. You know what I mean? And it's just like wow, like the movie does a really good job where anytime you see one of these parties, you can't help that if you were one of these young individuals, you would want to be a part of that. You can see why that life is so inviting and enticing to these individuals because we're watching it merely as a viewer and be like, man, if it was even half as crazy or as half as fun or as half as ridiculous as these scenes are making it out to be, it's no secret why all these people want to be involved. And they look, Martin Scorsese, when they filmed this, they definitely went for over the top and they nailed it.
right. And then we get the wedding where we see Leo pop and lock, and
Bro, he
they put that in the trailer too because you know what? We didn't know that he could do that. So
I didn't know Leo could move that way.
yeah,
Leo, when
not
I
bad.
say like if you would have told me, hey, that's actually not Leo and they just digitally imposed his head on someone else's body, I'd be like, okay, I can see that. But that's not what happened. It's just Leo crushing it on the dance floor.
Yeah. Um, so we get a glimpse into the marriage of Naomi and Jordan.
Mhm.
He says this is their daily routine. They have a morning ritual of fighting. Jordan gets himself ready by sweating out the drugs from the night before,
Oh man.
and then he takes his quote unquote back pills to start his
Mhm.
day. And then we get the infamous scene with Naomi and Leo with her shoe against his head,
Yes,
and um, once again, just Margot owning the scenes that
bro.
she is in with Leo. No knock against Leo,
No,
but
not
when
at
she
all.
but the just the Duchess character is just written
Mhm.
so extravagantly that it would take the right person to play this role. And here we have I'm just gonna continue gushing about Margot in this movie.
Yeah,
Just
dude, she's great.
at this point, she's a virtual unknown. That's what we call
Yes.
this, a virtual
Yes.
unknown. But what a star-making performance,
Yeah. You have two scenes, literally two scenes back to back.
Right.
You have this fight scene where she keeps hitting him in the face with water, and this is the first time in the movie we've seen Margot showcase this emotion. It's very angry, it's
Right.
loud, it's aggressive. Everything up to that point, she's playing the Duchess, and it's very like her job is to be as inviting as possible, as sexy as possible, as beautiful as possible. And in this scene, she's bringing the heat. Like she's fighting. Her and Leo are doing this acting exercise where they're just fighting and they're yelling at each other. And she just has this presence that isn't there for at all in the beginning of the movie. And now she's in it. And again, it's another reminder of how talented she is because she keeps throwing water. And it's such a funny scene. And he's like, one of my favorite things is she's like, you keep calling out this name, right, in your sleep. And he's like, who? Who? And she's like, who? What are you, a effing owl? But it's the way that she says it
Right.
that's so funny and so good. I'm like, her comedic timing's on point. And then following that fight scene, you have the shoe in the forehead scene. And in that scene, she's showcasing again that seductive side of herself,
Right.
where she's like, hey, I'm not even going to let you touch me. We're not going to be intimate. None of that's going to happen. But she's seducing him while she does it. And it's just like, again, you just can't help it. You like, she's that electric on screen.
Right. So the SEC and the FBI begin investigating Stratton Oakmont.
Yeah.
And in 1993, Jordan illegally makes 22 million in 3 hours after securing the IPO of Donnie's childhood friend and shoe designer Steve Madden.
Yes.
This brings him and his firm further FBI attention. So to hide his money, Jordan opens a Swiss bank account with corrupt banker Jean-Jacques Sorel in the name of Naomi's aunt Emma, who is a British subject and outside the immediate reach of American authorities.
Mhm.
He uses the wife and in-laws of Brad, who have European passports to smuggle the cash into Switzerland.
Yeah.
So, following this, this event here where they get to smuggle it, Donnie and Brad, who do not get along, get in a heated argument in public during a money exchange, resulting in Brad's arrest, but Donnie escapes. This is bad because
Very.
everything could have blown up and it would have been all Donnie's fault. But they were able to recover,
Mhm.
fortunately for now, but they could have lost everything just because all Donnie wants to do is, get a rise out of Brad, which he knows is easy to do.
Yeah, which I kill I man, I've seen this movie again like around 5 to 7 times, and I get so angry at the Donnie character
Right.
numerous times because they're in a situation where they're being investigated. He knows they're being investigated, and he does everything in his power to almost make it more complicated for Brad, who is the guy that's going to, help get the money to Swiss. He's got his wife. They're going to use her family. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And Brad doesn't like to be spoken to like he's just some like lapdog, you know what I mean? And Donnie does it on purpose. And Donnie tries to manipulate him and everything else. And it's like, Donnie, just stop for a second, please. And even Brad, who we've known to this point, Brad is a hothead. Brad has already punched him in the face. Brad has already pulled out a gun. Like, Brad does not play around. And even at this point, Brad is legitimately with his hands brought together saying, please just give me the bag. Just give me the bag of money. Let me take the money. Let me do, just please. And Donnie's just like, nah, I got to make it hard for you. It leads to the arrest, which could have been super bad because now Brad is arrested. They're going to question Brad. If Brad wasn't as committed as he was, Brad could have just ratted a couple guys out and that would have been the end of everything. Like it was so bad that the way the whole situation went down. And Donnie, man, Donnie thinks he's slick because, and we'll talk about it, we're not there yet, but Donnie does something because of this, and because he doesn't want to get in trouble with Jordan. He does something, and we'll talk about it when we get there. That I was like, oh man, you're just a bad dude, man. I wouldn't want to be your friend, man, because God in heaven, you're going to cost us all this money.
So Donnie's freaking out, understandably so, because he knows that Brad got picked up. So now
Mm-hmm.
he wants to distract Jordan before
Yes.
Jordan gets in a bad mood. So we get the infamous lemon Quaaludes scene,
Oh my God.
and they take them, and a half hour goes by, and they don't feel anything. So they
Mm-hmm.
keep taking them, not realizing that it takes time for them to
Yeah.
hit. It's too late by the time Jordan finds out about the wiretap because somebody called him and said,
Yeah.
Jordan, stop using the phone. The FBI are onto you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wiretap. And then the drugs hit. Um, this is wild. Um,
Yes.
Leo has to get in the car because he drove to the country club so he can use the phone over
Mm-hmm.
there. But then the drugs hit. Now he has to drive all the way back home. That's a mile away, but it feels like forever because of the Quaaludes. And then stop Donnie from using the phone, who's still using the phone. I put down here, it's the silliest we've seen Leo in years.
Yes.
And once the scene hit between Jordan and Donnie, in a way, I felt like I was watching Dumb and Dumber.
It.
Once he and Donnie were both high and at the house, and you think about people like Jim Carrey who are able to
Yeah.
use their body, but it felt like a scene out of Dumb and Dumber to me, right in the
It
middle of the movie.
was it was so funny. It's arguably, in my opinion, like the funniest scene in the movie. And there's plenty of
Right.
scenes that I just can't help but laugh at. But and we talked about this. Leo is known for being a terrific actor. He just really, really is. And Jim Carrey is a perfect example of an actor that when you think of great physical comedy, you think of Jim Carrey. Traditionally speaking, if you were talking about great physical comedians, Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't jump in your brain. It wouldn't jump into mine. But in this particular scene, when the Quaaludes hit, the body performance that he gives is so funny and entertaining that I have to give him his flowers because
Right.
I'm like, hold on, this is really good. Like, his physical comedy's on point. We're talking about how he's crawling and only using some of his limbs, either some of his legs, only his arms. His face is contorted. The way he's speaking is messed up, and him getting into the Lamborghini using nothing but his legs was so funny. And then he has to drive a mile. Like you said, a mile is not that far, but because he's under the influence so heavily, this is going to be a nightmare. And the way his arms, the way he's making his face, he's drooling. And when he gets to the house and Donnie's on the phone and he's trying so hard to just be like, get off the phone. Like
Right.
he's trying, and it's so entertaining. And Donnie's yelling at him and he's yelling back. And he's like, I know what you did. Now, obviously, not as clear as I'm saying it, but we know what he's saying. He's like, I know what you did. And Donnie's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, Brad. And he's just like, oh, and he goes, I'm gonna kill you. And they're hitting each other with the cord on the phone. He's got it wrapped around him. It slingshots. It makes a pop sound. He's like, ow. Like this whole sequence goes, man, off the top of my head, it's probably like a good 8 minutes nonstop of just craziness. And you have, on one moment, you have the television playing Popeye and the scene where Popeye takes spinach and he gets stronger. And during this whole battle between Donnie and Jordan, Donnie's in a panic and Donnie starts to grab lunch meats off the table and he's just stuffing his mouth and he starts to choke. And oh God, he's gonna die. And you have Naomi saying, oh my God, Jordan, he's dying. And Jordan doesn't know what else to do in a situation that he takes out more drugs. He takes out more drugs, a white substance. He puts it in his nose and it's able to give him like this a massive adrenaline while Popeye is playing. And I'm like, the comedic effect of
Right.
having Popeye playing while he's taking spinach and getting stronger at the same time, where Jordan is taking a white substance and he gets stronger and he gets up and he's pounding his chest and he's able to, to do compressions to get the meat out or whatever. And it's just, the whole sequence is just insanity, but it's so entertaining and so funny. But again, the entire time, I just wanted to knock out Donnie. Like I was like, please just knock this guy out.
So, as we stated, Jordan does learn from his private investigator that the FBI is wiretapping his phones. So, fearing for his son, Jordan's father advises him to leave Stratton Oakmont and to lie low while Jordan's lawyer negotiates a deal to keep him out of prison. But Jordan cannot bear to quit and talks himself into staying in the middle of his own farewell speech. This is where the I'm not leaving speech happens.
Yes.
I'm not going home. I'm not leaving. And they close it out with, the noise that Matthew McConaughey showed us in the beginning. And it's just so captivating. Excuse me, Jordan is just so captivating here.
Mhm.
And you see how much he has these people right in the palm of his hand. They're
Yeah.
so sad when they find out he's going to leave. And then he sees it. And more than the money, one could say Jordan liked the power he had over these people more than the
Yeah.
money, to the point that he couldn't leave that. He would still have the money, but then he would no longer have the power that he has over these people. And the
Mhm.
minute he said, I'm not leaving, they all cheered. They all
Yeah.
erupted and they started screaming and yelling and just getting all hyped up. And then he started, doing the chest thing
Yep.
there. It's a really powerful scene. It is now 1996, and Jordan, Donnie, and their wives are on a yacht trip to Italy when they learn that Emma has died.
Mhm.
Aunt Emma. Jordan proceeds to Switzerland to forge her name and save the account before going to London to attend her funeral. Mind you, they're doing all this when the FBI says you should not be leaving the country.
Yep. Can't leave the country, can't even be working. They're kind of
Right.
they're kind of working away from the business. And in the middle of that, he's like, yeah, we have to do this right now.
Right. So to bypass border controls, he orders his yacht captain to sail to Monaco, but the ship capsizes in a storm. After their rescue, the plane sent to them to Geneva is destroyed when a seagull flies into the engine. Jordan takes this as a sign from God to address his worsening drug addiction and attempts to sober up. So
Yep.
we have the trip in the storm. Once again, another wild moment. You know, they're back and forth. There's water going everywhere. The boats are the jet skis rather are falling off of the yacht. Um, And what does he do? He screams at uh at Donnie, "Get the lewds. I'm not dying
Get
sober.
the
I am
lewds.
not dying sober." You know?
The the entire sequence is great. First of all, Aunt Emma passes away,
Right.
and Jordan loses his mind, but he doesn't. It's not because she passed away. Obviously, you have Naomi who's like, "Oh my God, we lost her," and he's like, "Oh no, what about the money?" You know what I mean? Like that's all he's worried about. So the fact that they had to like take the yacht, go get to where they needed to go, he was willing to risk all of their lives because the captain's like, listen, man, it's gonna be, the water's gonna be pretty bad. They're gonna be pretty choppy. And he's like, oh, that's fine, right? Like choppy's okay, right? And the wives are like, listen, we are not going to let this safe. He goes, it's safe, it's fine, right? Like he's trying so hard to convince it's gonna be okay, and it's not. And again, we get a hard cut into just mass chaos. We have Donnie flipping out, like saying he doesn't want to die because he thinks he's going to go to hell because he's done a lot of terrible things. You have Jordan coming in like, I don't want to die sober. Go get the lewds. Go get them. You know what I mean? Boat capsizes. They get saved. As you mentioned, plane blows up. He's like, oh, that was the plane that I called to save us. He's like, you know what? All right. I guess that's a sign from God to get my life together. And I was like, I mean, finally, you're finally listening, man.
So it's now 1998, and Sorrel and Koskov get arrested for a separate crime and inform the FBI about Jordan. So they rat.
Yep.
And since the evidence against him is overwhelming, Jordan agrees to gather evidence on the rest of his colleagues in exchange for leniency because, he
Yeah,
has
it's
no other
bad.
choice,
It's bad.
After being intimate with each other for the last time, Naomi tells Jordan that she is divorcing him and wants full custody of their daughter and infant son.
Mhm.
In a drug-filled rage, Jordan hits Naomi and tries to drive away with his daughter, but crashes his car in the driveway.
Yeah.
Very emotional scene. I'm sure as a father,
Yeah.
seeing this, it was pretty hard.
This was the only scene in the movie that I think gets really heavy. Like it gets heavy. Especially because a lot of their interactions can be very funny, because everything's over the top. Um, but this didn't feel over the top. It felt like a really, really authentic bad situation between two parents. And he knows that he's going to serve time, and she tells him, she goes, I don't love you anymore, I don't want to be with you, and that kind of tears him up. And there's the mention of she's like, I'm not gonna let you see the kids, and that was too much for him, and it gets physical.
Right.
And at no point is it funny anymore. Like
Right.
this is not funny.
And at this point, he had been sober for 2 years, not even a
Yeah.
drink.
Nothing.
And then what does he do? He runs straight
Yep.
to his drugs, and
Yep.
because he wanted to feel something other than what he was feeling at that
Yep.
moment.
And
You know?
that's a very good thing to spot, because like you said, he was sober, and like the moment everything kind of came crashing down again, that's what he resorted to. He was like that. And he got violent. He hit her more than once. He hit her across the face. Then he hit her in the stomach, and he was like, you're not going to keep my kids away from me. It's really hard to watch, because he wakes his daughter up and she has no idea what's going on. And she's very young. She just knows that her father's waking her up and saying, honey, come with me. So she's, what else can she do? And she goes in the car, and like there's little moments where he's like, all right, put your seatbelt on, and she's putting her own seatbelt on. Again, she has no idea what's happening. She just knows that her dad is yelling, put your seatbelt on, and she's putting it on, and he crashes the vehicle. And it was kind of like the final nail in the coffin. Like that was like, dude, that's too much. Like this is too
Right.
far.
And I find it funny that he was sober, but he still kept a stash of drugs around just
Yep.
in case he wanted.
Always had it.
What did he do? I think he grabbed a knife and he cut open the sofa,
Yep.
and
He
he
cut it
found.
open. He found the
Right.
drugs, and they
So
were right there.
he was sober, but in the back of his mind, what if I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to turn back one day? So, and to your point, Naomi said, "Look at you, look at yourself."
Yeah.
Like, why would I want to be with this?
Yeah.
Like she just put it out there. So, and mind you, it's not like, and it wasn't just the drugs though, because that's how they bonded earlier
Yeah.
in the movie, if you remember that. But to Naomi's defense, at some point you have to change.
Yes.
And They had a very tumultuous relationship, a very tumultuous lifestyle. But for her, once I have these kids, this is when you're supposed to change. You're not supposed
Yes.
to continue living this lifestyle. Yes, we did have that lifestyle. But to your point, now it's different. It should be different now because now there's two
Yeah.
children involved. And it's not like she was judging Jordan for his decisions of, to go back to the drugs. Of course not. It's just because she doesn't like that not who he's become,
Yeah.
at in this moment, because he's had chances to change along the way,
Yes.
but the kids still weren't enough. She wasn't enough. And why would
Yep.
she want to continue being there? So,
I think that was the biggest takeaway, is that he had numerous opportunities and chances to change when people around him were telling him to, and his ego just would not let him. He couldn't, like, his father tells him at one point, he goes, "What are you doing? You won. Like, you won. Like, even with the fines that you're gonna pay, you're not gonna go to jail. You won, man. You have everything. You have a beautiful wife. You have kids. You have millions of dollars." And Jordan, it still was enough. He couldn't let go of that old life. And what was great about Naomi is that as the movie progresses, you see that lifestyle fade from her. She's no longer a part of that lifestyle. She's a mother. She takes care of her kids. She's no longer in those party scenes. She, like, that is beyond that. And it's a good point when she brings up and she tells him, she goes, look what you are.
right.
Look at
Right.
you.
And it wasn't just that. That's just another thing. It's if you had changed, you wouldn't be going to jail right now. You
Exactly.
would
There's so
you
much.
wouldn't have made those decisions to do that illegal thing that's
Hmm.
now that's now gotten you in jail. It's not just about the lifestyle, it's about you as a person.
Yep.
So um later on, Jordan wears a wire to work, but slips a note to Donnie warning him that he's wearing a
Hmm.
wire. The FBI discovers this, arrests Jordan, and raids and shuts down Stratton Oakmont. Um, Despite breaching his deal, Jordan receives a reduced sentence of 36 months in a minimum security prison for his testimony and is released in 2000 after serving 22 months.
Yeah.
After his release, Jordan makes a living hosting seminars and sales techniques. We close out with him asking people to sell him the pen, which
Hmm.
is how he started up the boiler room in the very beginning. You
Yeah.
know, um, I forget. I think Brad was the one who was able to sell it
Brad.
to him.
Yep.
Yeah,
He gives Brad the pen, and he goes, "You want me to say this pen?" And all Brad does is he takes the pen. He goes, "I want you to do me a favor. Write your name down on that napkin." And Jordan goes, "I don't have a pen." He goes, "Here you go, supply and demand." And it was that
yeah,
easy. That it was
great.
all about creating a situation where that person needed that item.
Right. Before we move into our initial thoughts here, how do you think the FBI got that note? Do you think this was just a suspension of disbelief that they somehow found it? Because would Jordan be stupid enough to not throw it away, or do you think Donnie ratted him out and then gave the note to him? How do you think the FBI got the note? It's up in the air.
Yes. It's
So you
it's
think
very up in the air.
right,
That, like, for me, like, I think the first time I saw it, I thought Donnie was an idiot, because Donnie's the one who covers it. Like, he goes, okay, and he covers it and he pulls it. And I was like, oh, Donnie's an idiot and threw it in the trash. You know what I mean? I was like,
right,
he threw it in the garbage, and the FBI, when they came to investigate, found the note. But when I watch it, because again, I've watched it numerous times, there have been times where I'm like, wait a minute, maybe did Donnie
maybe
give him the note to protect himself? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, Donnie doesn't do anything. And it's weird because Jordan tells him, he's like, hey man, don't incriminate yourself. And you see Donnie's face. And Donnie's face, even though Jordan is protecting him, there's almost this moment of like, I can't believe you're working with the feds. I can't believe it. So again, initially I'm like, oh, he's an idiot. He threw it in the garbage. And when the FBI came to, because they come periodically and they do all that kind of stuff, I was like, they found it in the trash. But they never tell us. They never let
right.
us know.
I looked it up, and apparently in the script, there's supposed to be a voiceover of Jordan saying that Donnie eventually rats him out. So the
Yeah.
assumption is that maybe he's the one that gave them the note. But Scorsese says, "I'll let you guys figure it."
Ambiguous, just
Right.
very ambiguous.
Leaves
Because again, he finds it and he goes, you're going to jail. And it's like, oh,
right.
that's not good.
All right. So that's our movie. So let's give some initial thoughts here. For me, it's just a wild ride. It's 3
Very.
hours, and even though I saw it, I broke it up, it was still just a wild ride. So much
Mhm.
happens within the course of 3 hours. Um, it's one of those movies, I hate to be cliche, it could have gone longer.
Yeah,
Just
I could have done more. It was crazy.
right. I mean, a lot happens, but, um, we just get some amazing performances,
Mhm.
from Leo, from Jonah Hill, an introduction to Margot Robbie. Just a lot happens, and for me, I'm gonna say something that you said to me off the air. It's just entertaining,
Very.
and it's a biopic, but it's fictionalized in a little bit,
Mhm.
in a sense. It's based on the book that Jordan Belfort wrote about himself. But for me, it's just a wild ride from beginning to end, and just highly entertaining.
Yeah, I genuinely mean it that it's one of the most entertaining movies that I can think of. And that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Like I'm not saying everyone is going to like it. I'm not saying everyone's going to love it or people going to hate it, but I'm saying it's one of the most entertaining, engaging movies that I've seen in many, many years. That this movie came out 10 years ago and every time I watch it, I'm just blown away at how entertaining it could be. Some people might find what, typically society would say is a dumb movie or a dumb show entertaining, and that's fine. This is just very, very entertaining. You have fantastic performances, great comedy, um, and then you have certain elements of drama that sneak in there. Like it's just great. And there's like thought-provoking stuff in the movie too. Like a perfect example for me is the very end when our agent Patrick is sitting on the train after the bust. Jordan is only doing 3 years and he's sitting on the train and he's sitting there and he's kind of looking around and seeing the company he's surrounded with. And he realizes that kind of like after everything that he had to go through and do, Jordan still got off light. Like he only
Right.
got 3 years and he's sitting there still thinking like, and here I am. I'm back on this train, sitting here with these, random strangers, contemplating, did I make the right choice in my life? It's just a very like there's a lot about the movie to take away, but it is super entertaining. I recommend it to everybody. And the funniest thing is that there are things in this movie that we could not talk about on here that we
Right.
just couldn't say because it's that insane. And for that alone, I think it's worth a watch. Like just for the things that we couldn't talk about because we don't want to
Right,
get
right. We
flagged
we
for
don't
any
wanna get
reason.
flagged and
We don't
have
want to get
our
flagged.
have our
So
viewership limited, right.
there is a lot of things that I would have loved to have talked about because they're just so ridiculous that I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of glad we didn't because if anybody hasn't seen it, I want them to experience it for the first
Right.
time because it's just again, they went really hard with how crazy this movie is.
So, The Wolf of Wall Street was a box office success. It had a budget of 100,000,000, which, by the
Mhm.
way, with this cast, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
a budget of 100,000,000, and, at the box office, it ended up being at 406.9 million, so more than profitable. Um, The Wolf of Wall Street also made some noise at the Oscars the following year. It did not win any, but it was
Yeah.
nominated for 5 Oscars. It
Yeah.
was nominated for Best Actor, Leonardo DiCaprio, Best Supporting Actor, Jonah Hill, hello,
Dude.
a quote unquote comedic actor up until now
Yep.
that, he did a great job with that. Um, we have Best Adapted Screenplay. We have Best Director, Martin Scorsese, and of course, Best Picture overall.
Yeah.
And of note, this is the one where people thought that Leo was going to win it. They
I
right, and then right, we thought, and then here comes Matthew McConaughey
Matthew
with
McConaughey,
you
man.
know with
Oh boy.
Dallas Buyers Club. It was just like, okay, he looks like he almost died.
Yeah.
You were awesome, but he looks like he almost died. We got to give it to him.
I
So
feel I feel like for I feel like there have been many, many, many years on social media among friends that we've all been rooting for Leo to finally get it, right? And when I saw this movie and found out he got nominated, I was like, yes. I was like, he's gonna get it. There's no way he's gonna get it. And then a little movie called Dallas Buyers Club came out, and it was like, oh man, I don't know now. Like I was
right,
like, oh, stiff competition. You know what I mean? But a fantastic performance nonetheless. Jonah Hill was another one who, again, is mainly known for comedic, and again, he can be very comical in the movie, but there's a lot of serious stuff with him as well, and he did a really good job. And what I liked about Jonah Hill, and it's a fun fact, I'm sure plenty of people know it, but for those who don't, and because we talked about the budget of the movie, Jonah Hill took a massive pay cut to be in this movie,
Right.
where Jonah Hill got paid $60,000,
Yeah.
$60,000. Now, again, to someone like me, you pay me $60,000 to be in a movie, that's incredible. Leonardo DiCaprio walked away with $10 million. He got paid $10 million for the project. Jonah got paid $60,000. So you can notice a difference. But the reality is that Jonah Hill basically took the lowest amount that he could make on a SAG wage, just because he wanted to work with Martin Scorsese. And I wanted to bring that up because we talk about it often, especially when it comes to great directors, especially guys like Christopher Nolan. When you see a budget for a movie and you're like, how did they have this amazing cast
Right.
with this kind of a budget? And sometimes, and we talk about it, it's always great when we see an actor or a group of actors who want to work with a director so much that they're willing to take that pay cut. Again, Christopher Nolan is one of those guys everybody wants to work with. So it was really awesome to see Jonah Hill just be like, listen, I really want to work with Martin Scorsese. And who wouldn't? Martin Scorsese is another one of the greatest directors out there. Like, who
Right.
wouldn't want to work with that? Who wouldn't want to work with Leo? Who wouldn't want to work with this cast? So I love the fact that Jonah was like, listen, you could pay me the lowest amount possible under SAG rules and regulations. I just want to be in this movie. And I thought it's really cool that he did it.
And guess what? From now on, he's known as Oscar nominated Jonah
Jonah
Hill.
Hill. Yup,
So,
that's right.
so let's give a little love to the cast. Of course, we have Leonardo DiCaprio as Jordan Belfort. We have
Mhm.
Jonah Hill as Donnie Azov. We have Margot Robbie as Naomi LaPaglia. We have Matthew McConaughey as Mark Hanna. Kyle Chandler as FBI
Mhm.
agent Patrick Denham. And we have Rob Reiner as Max Belfort, Jordan's dad. We have John Bernthal as Brad Bonnick. We have John Favreau as Manny Riskin. He had a little cameo as well.
Yes, he did.
We have Jean Desjardins as Jean-Jacques Sorel. We have Joanna Lumley as Aunt Emma and Krista Milotti as Teresa Petrillo. Also, we can't skip out on this. We have the real Jordan Belfort. He was in it
Yes, yes.
as the Auckland Straight Line host at the end of the movie.
Mhm.
So, and I already mentioned Spike Jonze as Dwayne, the head of the Long Island brokerage firm. So, huge cast, lots of names here. I do want to give a shout out to Kyle Chandler. He is great in Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
So that's a show. I know we don't talk about shows too much on here, but for me, the thing with Friday Night Lights is that apparently there's no blocking involved in
That's
that
what I heard.
show.
That's what I heard.
So the
Zero blocking.
actors memorize the lines, and the directors didn't give them direction. They just said, "Do whatever feels organic to you," and
Mhm.
that's how that show was done. So I always thought that was cool. But Chandler's been in a lot of movies, but for me, it's the whole Friday Night Lights thing where I just enjoyed that as far as his career goes. So that's it as far as our cast goes. Let's start winding down here. Oh, by the way, if you could pick a standout from the cast, who would you pick? You already know my
Oh
choice.
man.
It's, yeah, I mean,
Listen.
like Jonah Hill's amazing. Don't get me wrong. Him and Jordan, excuse me,
Mhm.
Jonah Hill's amazing as Donnie. Leonardo DiCaprio, amazing as Jordan. Well deserved Oscar nominations. Some would argue with Leo a win, you
Mhm.
know, and not as much with Jonah Hill. I mean, he's going against Jared Leto with what he did, you know,
Yeah.
as that character in Dallas Buyers Club. But you know, some people still think that not that the wrong guy won, but that maybe Leo should have won that year, you know,
Mhm.
even though Matthew McConaughey put himself through that. But those performances aside, do you have any favorite performances in this movie? I mean, for me, how can you not say Margot Robbie? You know,
Yeah.
so
Margot Robbie in this movie right away, and many of us, but speaking for myself personally, I was like, that's a star. Like
yeah,
Margot's a star. And there was a reason why. her career exploded after this movie.
Yeah.
I remember watching, I started looking up older projects. I started looking up movies that she had been in because of this film. And that's always fun when you can find an unknown, a relatively unknown actor, and be blown away by a performance and start looking into their other works. And I'm like, oh man, like again, she's fantastic. Um, the cast is stacked though, dude. Like
Yeah.
Margot's probably the MVP in terms of like the unknown that came on, held her own with Leonardo DiCaprio, even guys like Jonah Hill, because everyone knows Jonah Hill. Like
Right.
she's in a room full of people that's extremely recognizable. You know what I mean? I personally loved John Bernthal. This was at a time
Yeah.
where John Bernthal was really blowing up, but John Bernthal was being really smart about the roles that he was getting, because when I say John Bernthal, I say a leading man. Like I'm like, he's a leading man,
Right.
but he was being really strategic with his roles, and he wasn't necessarily pulling for the leading man roles. He was just finding really great character work. And I love that about John, where I would see him in numerous projects and it never felt like he was playing the same person twice. And I love that. I loved seeing him in it. I'm going to go a little random as well. Kenneth Choi as Chester Ming
Oh,
is one
really?
of my favorite people in
Okay.
this movie. He's so good and so funny. And you know, he's got the weight gain and he's using a lot of the jokes with food and humor and whatnot, that I was like, every time he was on screen, he was making me laugh. Like I absolutely loved him because he's one of the people in like the core group for Jordan Belfort. Like he's one of the original guys that comes in, and I don't know what it was. He was so likable. I honestly don't know, but every time he was on screen, I had like a smile on my face because he either made me laugh and I would just get behind everything that he was saying. So I loved him. John Bernthal, again, absolutely fantastic. I love the roles that he was choosing at the time. I love that he was being very strategic with the roles. But again, the whole cast kills it. But the one that stood out, again, next to Leo, next to Jonah, just taking him out of the conversation for a second, and even if you leave him in the conversation, Margot Robbie exploded on screen. Great presence, great performance, holding around with big league people like Leo, working for like in the first time in a major motion picture that's going to be seen by many people. It's Martin Scorsese, and killing it, absolutely crushing it. She was a star going into this movie, and she was an even bigger star coming out of it. And now she's one of the most recognizable names on the planet.
Alrighty. Well, um, so let's give some closing thoughts here.
Mhm.
For me, 10 years, but hasn't aged a day. It's only been
Nope.
10 years, but hasn't aged a day. Um, it's still relevant today as far as performances that are memorable, and as far as a history lesson in seeing where people can come from to catapult their career into a different direction. You know, Margot was a virtual unknown before this movie. I'm assuming Jonah Hill had taken on some serious roles, but people were ready to see him in more serious roles after this movie. You know,
Mhm.
he wasn't just doing comedic roles, and it wasn't the one that got him the Oscar, but after this movie, it was like, okay, it wasn't a matter of when it was gonna happen, it was a matter of how long, you know,
Yeah.
because, Leo was also a producer on this movie too, so he was a big part of the
Mhm.
success of this movie. Sometimes, little insider information here, sometimes when actors are producers, they get to dictate creatively what's happening
Mhm.
because they care about the and then as you care about the project more, you're gonna give a better performance, you know, that's
Yeah.
just how it works. So, for me, just a nice history lesson of, where we were in 2013, um and also just it's classic Scorsese,
Yeah, dude.
just all or nothing, and that's just the way Scorsese is with his movies. But for me, just memorable, and I mean, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Margot again. 3 years later, she's playing Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
One of the most memorable um, roles ever, and then eventually and who knows if Margot Robbie doesn't get Harley, does she ever get Barbie? We don't know.
Yeah, like
So
it's again, it's one of the most entertaining movies I've seen. It's
yeah,
I own it. I own it. It was a must own for me. I was like, I have to own this movie. I'm also a big fan of team ups between directors and actors. I love when I see that, like when I see like a partnership, and Scorsese and Leo have developed a
Yeah,
partnership over the years, and I
right.
love seeing that because when I see that, I know they're both going to bring the absolute best out of one another. So I like seeing, like when I think of Steven Spielberg, I think he's worked a lot with Tom Cruise. Like I like when I see that. I like when I see a director and an actor team up to make great films, and they've made a few. So I love that aspect of this film. I love Leo as a producer, helping with some of the creative decisions. Again, one of the most entertaining movies I've seen. I think that it holds up extremely well. And it's also, because of the movie in itself, the movie of itself lends itself to the fact that, you could watch this 20 years later and it's still going to hit. You could watch it 30 years later and it's still going to hit because it's not relying on anything that is required of the time for it to be successful. It's like, no, it's just a great movie about great characters, over the top ridiculousness about a guy who is essentially Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, who didn't know when enough was enough. And, it caused his own downfall. But at the end of the day, I highly recommend it to friends quite often who haven't seen it. I'm like, hey, have you seen this? You should watch it. So it's one of my favorite performances from Leonardo DiCaprio, one of my favorite performances from Jonah Hill. And again, because of this movie, we've got a megastar in Margot Robbie.
Yeah,
Again, it's a testament to the movie. It's a testament to whoever found her. Listen, whoever cast it, whoever sat down, everything, like wonderful cast all around. But finding someone like Margot Robbie at that age, again, I think you said she was like
right,
23 when it came out, extremely
right.
young.
And
Hold like, good
I
God.
mean, and if she would have been nominated too, no one would have argued with that decision
No.
if she got
If you'd have
nominated too.
if you'd have told me that she got nominated for Best Supporting Actress, I'd be like, yeah, yeah, I buy
So
that. I buy that.
I did want to close out here by putting it out there all the nominations that Leo had gotten for acting. So
Mhm.
in 94, Best Supporting Actor, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. In 2005, Best Actor, The Aviator. In 2007, Best Actor, Blood Diamond. In 2014, Best Actor, Wolf of Wall Street. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the fourth one. And then the fifth one was 2016, The Revenant, and he won it for that one.
Yep.
And 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he had another one, 2020, for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So it took his fifth try at an Oscar
Hmm.
nomination, and he finally got it. And of course, he was nominated for Best Picture as being a producer for The Wolf of Wall Street as well. So had to give
Yeah.
a shout out to that. Alrighty, folks. That was the Panel Bros official breakdown for The Wolf of Wall Street. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, we'd appreciate it. As always, those subscribes go a long way to help our reach. And if you could also let us know how you felt about The Wolf of Wall Street in the comments below, we'd appreciate that as well. Have you seen the movie recently? Do you have any favorite performances? Is this your favorite Scorsese movie? Please let us know. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.